The Amazing Spider-Man arguably has the most iconic rogues gallery in comics history, aside from maybe Batman. However, his most dangerous and terrifying villain comes in the form of Carnage, who recently has been getting only stronger and stronger to the point where he became a god. So let's see if his god status truly takes up and put him against a threat much stronger than the street tiers he often faced before his godly power amp. The Avengers. Can Carnage truly press the Avengers so horrendously Null did previously? Well, with Marvel calling Carnage in his god form a character capable of bringing the Marvel Universe to its knees, let's see if he truly holds up. For context, we're going to go over the base Avengers versus Carnage after he gained all of his amps. Now, I know what you're thinking. Carnage, at best a little above street tier, are you crazy? And normally, yes. But as I have specified, comics for the symbiotes have been going only increasing in power from their street tier selves, growing immensely such from this point. And Carnage is no different. Many do not know about the power boost he's gotten through his past runs. So we're going to be at first going over essentially his godly history ever since his base form to the form he takes currently. And then we'll compare him in a almost tier-like format to the Avengers to see who he beats, since obviously I can't cover every single Avenger individually. Starting off with a base Carnage who is shown directly being superior to characters like Spider-Man and Venom, even at once, on several occasions. Spider-Man is already a pretty strong character who is commonly in the street tier categories, having feats against numerous other street tiers or characters in the Avengers, such as Black Panther, Punisher, Daredevil, Captain America, and so on. Spider-Man also scaling characters like Scorpion, who have feats on Luke Cage and Iron Fist. Venom is already stronger than Spider-Man, and even weaker iterations of Venom have boxed up a full Bard's bloodlusted Spider-Man and came out on top. With once again, a base Venom being vastly insignificant compared to a base Carnage. Venom having his own feats against other higher tier characters in the Marvel catalog as well, with Spider-Man having the same, such as when he fought Namor, Morlun, even Rhino, and other villains at points have had feats against stronger characters than the Marvel timeline. Obviously, doesn't mean Spider-Man is consistently on their level. That's just not true. Nor is Venom, despite how he may have tossed Ghost Rider around sometimes, boxed up Juggernaut, and taken beatings from the Hulk, or how even people below Venom like Toxin can beat up Thor, or I guess classic Thor level rogues. But obviously, as I just said, they're not nearly as strong as these higher tier characters. This is just kind of established that Spider-Man and Venom should be in the higher ranges of what a street tier could provide in Marvel, if just not being a street tier at all. Especially with how handily Spider-Man and Venom have dealt with street tiers in previous encounters, most of the time at least. But Carnage himself is no stranger to having feats on non-street level characters, such as the time he's able to corrupt the Thing of all characters. But let's move on to the juicy stuff when he actually starts to gain his godly forms. After Carnage absorbed part of the Grendel symbiote and went on a side quest, he became Dark Carnage, starting his rampage to collect all the codexes. Wait, what's a codex? That's a really good question. A codex is a part of a symbiote that stays attached to your spine after you bond to the symbiote, and if given access to a symbiote, not only can they use and gain the powers of the user at will, they also just become as strong as the person, essentially gaining their scale. This is stated directly, and this will be very important later. And after he gains his new dark form, he fights Venom and brutally backhands him, essentially one-shotting, with Venom not only calling this hit the hardest he's ever been hit, the comic actually describes Carnage as the strongest foe Venom has ever faced up until this point in time. Later on, we see, once again, he's dealt with several other lower tier caliber characters, just Miles Morales, Wolverine, Captain America, and Deadpool. I know Deadpool has some higher end scaling, so take that as you will. Also, during this time, he was actually able to box with Captain Marvel. Even if he does lose, he tanks her blast and can harm her. While this isn't even really a full power Dark Carnage, it's just one of the parts of himself he seems to send on a rampage, while the real him is just chilling in a part of New York. And one of these parts also even fights Weapon H, the Wolverine and Hulk combo, which is quite impressive. Later on in the story, and he gains almost all of the codexes, merely just needing Eddie's at this point, to awaken Null. Venom ends up bonding with a Savage Hulk, with the two trading blows and being physically relative, with Carnage getting the upper hand by going into Hulk's head and forcing him back to Banner, taking back Venom and absorbing the last of the codexes. The run ends with Venom taking half of the codexes and eventually defeating Carnage, before he slithers away. Next we go to Extreme Carnage, where after he awakened Null in Absolute Carnage, which we'll get to know later, don't forget that, we mostly learn of the new abilities he's gained and that he's also got stronger since his last encounters with Venom. He essentially gains full-on corruption, mental manipulation, almost like in a Freddy Krueger type sense where he has his own realm, where he can do anything he puts his mind to, and even reality warping in a sense, which book descriptions do back this up as actual warping of reality. In this story, he was almost able to take out Iron Man once he gets close, and can effectively tank an off-guard shot from Iron Man as well. And this is going to be a very consistent theme in this video, by the way. Carnage getting stronger than his previous self. Now, we're just going to speed run from the Carnage 2022 and 2023 run, as well as Death of the Venomverse, where he gains and starts to utilize his godly power. I'm not going to cover every single notable thing, since that would be crazy, and we'll mostly get to anything I forget later on. But the main factor is Carnage is consistently growing stronger and stronger. He gets stronger every issue. It's steady pretty much every issue he does. To the point where it's said that he's growing stronger every second, and each kill he gets, he absorbs the person's powers and just gets stronger as a result. He also gains his own weapon, the All Blood, a stronger or I guess the Necrosphere you can call it, a stronger weapon than the blade Null wield, you know, the one that could kill Celestials and stab through Cosmic Thor, made from Uru metal, you know, the same weapon that makes Thor's hammer and armor. Speaking of armor, he has that too, in the Uru kind as well. He kills and absorbs the power of Spot, allowing him to travel the multiverse to his will, attacks, tortures, and destroys Hydro Man by literally tearing apart his cells, kills Malekith, and absorbs his power after he makes a deal with Hela, who considers Carnage simply too powerful to control. This same Hela considering characters like Doom as ants, which is consistent considering a current Venom could box with Doctor Doom, who, once again, we will get to a current Venom. On Earth, since he seemed to split himself apart, a part of him that was essentially symbiote hostless, which makes the symbiote weaker, he was beating up a team of a current Iron Man, an Iron Spider Miles Morales, Taskmaster, Scorpion, and some other Spider-Man villains, in which not only was he not taking the fight seriously and toying with them, he was winning for most of the time. He also goes around the Venomverse, literally killing every single Venom, which is insane. Gaining the powers of an Inheritor and beating one up, you know, the Inheritors that were on a multiversal journey to box with every single Spider-Man, and Spider-Man considers the strongest person he's ever fought and thinks he strikes as hard as the Hulk, before eventually, in the final issue, going back to King in Black, to where even previously he's considered to have power that rivals Null, killing Silver Surfer and gaining what seems to be the Enigma Force before eventually killing Null and gaining his power. Same thing with a Celestial. Before even fighting and doing well against the God form of Eddie Brock, even after the eventuality bonded with him, which is insane. And I could go on and on about what he does in these runs, but you get the idea. So we're going to start with the general tiers of the Avengers. First, we're going to start off with our low to mid tier Avengers. Our street tiers and our slightly above street tiers. Spider-Man, Wolverine, Captain America, Black Panther, Daredevil, Iron Fist, Black Widow, Hawkeye, all fit in this tier. Anyone in this tier just gets clapped, even by a regular old Carnage. He's already 2v1 Spider-Man and Venom, with Spider-Man alone being one of, if not the strongest person in this tier. He has feats against Black Panther, Captain America, Daredevil, Punisher, so on, so forth. In fact, Carnage in base has fought directly against some of these characters and won, such as when he corrupted Captain America and Wolverine in Carnage USA. And even weaker characters than a base Carnage, like Hybrid, have been able to 1v4 Spider-Man, The Thing, Wolverine, and Captain America and win before the symbiote Sleeper jumped in. Now we move on to our higher tier Avengers. They are not the absolute pinnacle of what the Avengers can be, but they are the general strongest members aside from some. We have people like Iron Man, Ghost Rider, Doctor Strange, Sentry, so on and so forth. But for this channel, I'm going to be spending time to go over some individual matchups. But once again, if he closes this tier, then he should just be anyone who you consider in this tier. First up is the aforementioned Iron Man. This is pretty simple, as in the Carnage Reigns run, and as I mentioned before, a part of the real Carnage, who was simply toying with the heroes, is able to not only tank fits and consistently overpower Iron Man directly, and is able to just take hits and destroy Iron Man, as well as the heroes Iron Man has backup, with the comic's description backing its interpretation up. Next up is Ghost Rider, also pretty simple. The King in Hell Ghost Rider did not know how to kill a simple symbiote dragon, as the dragon tanked all of Ghost Rider's attacks, and Ghost Rider just admits he couldn't do anything to it. The only debatable thing he thinks he could do was try to remove his soul, which not only implies that this symbiote dragon is stronger than a King in Hell Ghost Rider, but that Ghost Rider's hacks only debatably work, and we definitely know the penance there doesn't work, as symbiotes have consistently resisted it, which this King in Hell Ghost Rider says the same thing. Besides that, Carnage already has the powers of the Spirit of Vengeance in him anyways from the Codex he absorbed from another Ghost Rider. So it really doesn't do anything for him. It also doesn't help that Carnage is now not only immune to fire and sound outright, but is immune to electricity, which once again is very important, meaning no one can exploit his weaknesses now. He has none. Captain Marvel is also really simple. We already see that in Absolute Carnage, who he grows massively stronger than, is tanking her hits and damaging her, even overpowering her briefly. There's no real reason to believe a much stronger version would just destroy her. Even considering at times an amped Captain Marvel can get contended by Spider-Man and bleed from strikes from the spot and struggle with him on 2 separate occasions. The same Spot who got torn in half and into little pieces by Carnage. More or less the feats that characters much obviously below this god tier Carnage have against Captain Marvel, such as the Hulk. Doctor Strange, which we already know the Grendel symbiote, a symbiote dragon, was able to not only overpower Doctor Strange's magic, but Doctor Strange physically, and this Grendel symbiote is equated to a extremely amped Carnage in the Carnage Reigns run, which once again is simply just a weaker form of the God Carnage that we see in other issues, in which we even see that eventuality tells Venom that his new power that he gains is directly beyond magic, with the literal example being provided being Doctor Strange directly. And Carnage can directly fight and even overpower this current Venom. And once again, if Doctor Strange is not above Grendel, then he's not above a God Carnage. There's several more Avengers we can talk about, such as Sentry, who got ripped in half by Null, who Carnage killed, or so on and so forth. But the general idea is that Carnage is beating anyone in this tier. So, let's move on to the absolute pinnacle the Avengers have to offer. Thor, Wanda, and Hulk. Starting with Wanda, which I think is very difficult to answer. Both have win cons for the other, and both only really need a couple or even one good hit to take down the other. Carnage actually has chaos magic due to Dylan's Venom at one point having it, and since we know when the symbiote kings of Codex, they get their powers, with Carnage with all of his amps would have all the codexes and be above them as he destroyed the Garden of Time, which contains all the codexes. So Carnage would have at least a basic understanding of chaos magic and be able to utilize and counter chaos magic to a basic degree, which he also has his own mind and reality hacks just like Wanda. A single good hit would corrupt her, or physically just one-shot her, as we know that Sphere can bypass things like regeneration and immortality as it did with Null and the Celestials. Even Null, who is a abstract god of the void, still just died when Carnage shoved the spear through his chest. So Wanda having any abstract nature doesn't matter here either. His regeneration also makes any dealt of physical attacks really hard, or blast or energy to really kill him. And both can also just BFR the other. And both can also mess with Fate, as Carnage destroys the Web of Life, which does deal with Fate. But the main way that Wanda could deal with Carnage would be negating his powers or just simply erasing him. Saying no more Carnage would actually work here. It just depends if Wanda goes for this instantly, or if Carnage gets the drop on her, or like how both seem to do, both don't usually use their most OP abilities anyways, which I don't understand why. It's probably to make the fight more interesting, but considering the two should be relative in speed, and there's no real direct chain scaling for them speed-wise, unlike some of the other characters here where there is a lot more direct chain scaling comparisons for these two characters, and we know example for a fact that both are a measurable speed due to the scaling of speedsters on both ends for the characters for different reasons. So I would understand if he said like one side stomped or the other side stomped, but I could just see it going either way. It's a very 50-50 situation. Hulk and Thor is also quite interesting. Like Carnage, Hulk and Thor have grown massively from their time in King in Black and Absolute Carnage. Meaning, Carnage may have had feats in them like a couple years ago, but it doesn't apply to their current bases at all. As well, Carnage has obviously gotten much more stronger. Hulk has gotten stronger to the point where Titan, being above Null, is someone that Hulk just bought. And this Titan should be kind of comparable to Carnage, since Null is still somewhat relative to Carnage, though he still did get stronger after this point, obviously after he absorbed its power, so it's likely not an anti-feat. That the weaker Carnage can get harmed by Null in some cases, but still, it does show that Hulk is a lot stronger than the one Carnage faced previously. Same thing with Thor. Thor has the same statement, with Hulk even being called the strongest opponent the Avengers have ever faced, including people like Null, and probably beings even stronger than Carnage have fought, with even Thor at the time of King in Black. Well, he did lose, could put up a good fight against Null, even smashing his jaw off. With Hulk and Thor likely getting stronger, and Hulk specifically having a better growth factor throughout the fight. Both Hulk and Thor have ways to negate or bypass Carnage's immortality and regen, and essentially just knock him out or just kill him. While Carnage really doesn't have a way to bypass theirs, well, we could say, for example, Carnage has an immunity to electricity, and it's even possible Carnage could perform the same trick that he did in Absolute Carnage, where he forces Hulk back into Banner. I just don't see either of them letting that happen, and especially when Hulk would be just beating Carnage to death, and more or less letting him perform the same trick twice. So while Carnage is very strong and would have a very favorable matchup against almost any Avenger, he would not clear them all, as the strongest of them would be able to deal with Carnage. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a while since I've talked about what is essentially my favorite character, so I hope it didn't come off as biased. But please like, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoyed. Peace.